Our next speaker is the Secretary of the U.S. Navy. He's responsible, from the Department of Navy perspective, for overseeing both the Navy itself plus also the Marine Corps. He is the author of the Military Statecraft Strategy and was recently seen in Korea last week touring South Korean shipyards to better understand how to drive U.S. shipyard performance. Please welcome Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro.
Jim was just reminding me to stay on schedule, and I'm perfectly willing to take Frank Kendall's time later on this afternoon. Before I go into my comments, how about a huge round of applause for those courageous sailors and Marines that have been fighting back Houthi attacks in the Red Sea and the Mediterranean over the last 4 months now. I often say that it wasn't easy to drag me back from the private sector, but it was certainly to be able to again serve those proud Marines and sailors and civilians who serve in our department, and I'm very thankful for this opportunity. So good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back here for my third appearance before McAleese Defense Program Conference. I want to thank you, Jim, for that wonderful introduction. Very short. Thank you very much. As I've said before, my job as the 78th Secretary of the Navy is to provide combat-ready forces and capabilities to the President, the Secretary of Defense, and our combatant commanders, and I take that responsibility very seriously. But as a former career surface warfare officer and also a small business owner in the defense industry, I fully understand and appreciate what all of you in this room do for not just our national security, but our nation's economic security. And there's not enough ways to thank you, because I often do say that it takes a team to be successful in our business. Former Chief of Naval Operations Admiral King once said, and I quote, "Nothing remains static in war or military weapons, and it is consequently often dangerous to rely on courses that are suggested by apparent similarities to the past." Could not agree more with the former CNO. And I implore you to assume this mindset and refuse the temptation to accept the status quo for what it is. Transformation and innovation are key to our success in the world we live today. And as Secretary, that is what I've tried to stand by in the 2.5 years that I've served in this role. We do face incredible challenges in every corner of the globe, as you well know. In the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, we're working alongside our NATO allies and Middle East partners, over 20 of them, to ensure the safety of innocent civilian mariners and protect our commercial shipping against Iranian-aligned Houthi attacks. And my sympathies and prayers go out to the families of the 3 innocent merchant mariners that were just recently lost as part of these vicious attacks. In Europe, Russia continues the 3rd year of its illegal and unprovoked war of aggression, as you heard my good friend Mike just talk about. And this war is no longer a stalemate. Russia has made ground. As you know, they've captured the Ukrainian city of Avdiivka. And while the threat of President Putin's reign has always hovered in the background of public consciousness, the death of Alex Navalny is still yet another stark reminder of Vladimir Putin's tyrannical and unjust regime and the threat that it poses to democracies and other nations around the world and our national security. This is a critical moment in history. I implore you that Congress must pass the National Security Supplemental Funding Bill to resupply Ukrainian forces so that they may continue to fight for not only their freedom and sovereignty, but for democracy around the globe as well. In the Indo-Pacific, North Korea has publicly abandoned its long goal of reunification with South Korea, and in fact, it now views them as the main enemy. North Korea continues the creation and testing of new and dangerous military capabilities, including numerous very sophisticated ICBMs. It now also aligns itself closely with Russia and poses an incredible threat to South Korea and Japan. And I assure you, having just come back from South Korea and Japan, They're deeply nervous about what's going on. Kim Jong-un has even bestowed President Putin the concerning title of Korean people's closest friend. And while the world's focus has shifted to other parts of the globe, the People's Republic of China continues to enforce its excessive maritime claims throughout the South China Sea and elsewhere. To effectively face these mounting challenges and threats, we must commit to a whole-of-nation effort to support our Navy and our Marine Corps at the pointy end of the spear. In response to the attacks on innocent commercial mariners, our Navy and Marine Corps team has resoundingly responded. And I would attest that it's actually because of the investments that were made by our government and by industry over 40 years ago that we have been able to perform as brilliantly as we have been able to perform in the Red Sea today with investments in the Aegis weapon system, the spy radar, and many other weapon systems. Today in the Red Sea, our ships and aircraft have deterred the missiles and drones which threaten innocent maritime shipping. Carney, Mason, Gravely, Laboon, Thomas Hudner, Eisenhower, their engagements call back to their warfighting namesakes and indeed their legacies. And I've spoken with all these commanding officers, their spouses, and their ombudsmen, and I thank them, and I thank their families for their sacrifice to our national security and our nation. We are working in concert with our allies and partners in the region who have engaged drones and missiles, including United Kingdom Royal Navy destroyer HMS Diamond, German frigate Hessen, and Italian Navy destroyer Cauduli. We have engaged Houthi targets in Yemen alongside Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands, the UK, and New Zealand. Operation Prosperity Guardian remains a collective effort. When the Houthis struck Marshall Islands flagged motor vessel Marlin Luanda with an anti-ship ballistic missile in January, the USS Carney, French Navy frigate Alsace, and Indian Navy destroyer Vishakhapatnam responded and assisted with firefighting efforts. Interoperability matters, folks. It matters. And as we continue to invest in these great capabilities and platforms, we must strive to achieve as much interoperability and interchangeability as we possibly can. Just last month, NATO assumed command of the United States and British forces in the Eastern Mediterranean. Naval Strike Forces NATO executed a transfer of authority, assuming command of more than 5,000 sailors and Marines assigned to Bataan Amphibious Readiness Group, which included the USS Mesa Verde, the Arleigh Burke, and Royal Fleet Auxiliary Argus. We are indeed a unified fighting force, and our network of partners and allies around the globe is a critical advantage that we have over our potential adversaries. In order to maintain this warfighting advantage, we must continue looking forward to new innovations, adapting to the threats of today while anticipating the threats of tomorrow. Last year, I spoke about my 3 enduring priorities: strengthening maritime dominance, building a culture of warfighting excellence, and enhancing strategic partnerships, a vision that I have stood firm for the past 3 years. Enhancing strategic partnerships incorporates not only naval diplomacy across our oceans and the aforementioned relationships in the sea, and our relationships with our lawmakers in Congress, but crucially, also our partnerships with those within the defense industry. We are fundamentally reliant on industry to ensure that our ability to maintain our warfighting edge. And industry is building and delivering mission-ready ships to our Navy and Marine Corps, strengthening maritime dominance in a time when the world looks to the United States for both leadership and guidance. Just last month in San Diego, we commissioned the USS John Canley, ESB-6, and the world's finest Navy. This expeditionary sea-based ship increases our fleet's capability and overall lethality, allowing our maritime forces the ability to stage troops wherever they are needed in the world, including in the Red Sea. It is an exciting time for new technologies in our Navy and our Marine Corps. We're pushing the bounds of tactics and capabilities with the future of the Richard M. McCool LPD-29. Earlier this year, she was fitted with Enterprise Air Surveillance Radar, EASR antenna, marking the first U.S. Navy installation activation of the SPY-6 rotating variant of the S-band radar, and this is very exciting for those of you who know warfighting. The EASR will integrate into the ship self-defense system, and it will revolutionize our amphibious fleet, enabling them to detect, track, and engage the enemy. Our amphibious ships play a crucial role in testing and validating our newly directed energy weapons technology as well, including the laser weapon system demonstrator on USS Portland, which was fitted and successfully engaged a Marine target in the Gulf of Aden. And while I was in San Diego just last month, I visited USS Preble fitted with the Helios laser weapon system. This is the direction that our Navy needs to move into in the future. Directed energy weapons, including high-energy lasers, are indeed the future of warfare, offering a lower cost per shot against air and missile defense engagements. But there's still a lot of R&D and a lot of engineering that needs to be done to get this right, and I'm committed in the 26 and 27 budgets to continue to put more money into these technologies. Now, while our hard kill successes are making the news every day, we are also strengthening our non-kinetic shield. The USS Pinckney was the first to receive the new SLIC-32 Victor 7 Surface Electronic Warfare Improvement Program, known as CWIP, Block 3, refining and improving the Arleigh Burke's class overall electronic warfare capabilities. The kinetic events in the Red Sea highlight the necessity for quick rearming of our ship's vertical launch systems to maximize our on-station time as well. And we are seeking out new ways to accomplish missile unloads, including the TRAM, which is developing in Port Hueneme, hopefully with a sea trial sometime this summer. I've directed that at-sea demonstration of TRAM, and I look forward to both its successful demonstration and subsequent implementation into the fleet. And our innovation includes not only material technologies, but also the structural changes within our Navy. Last month, we introduced the Robotics Warfare Specialist, or RW rating, that the CNO announced. Our RWs will enable robotics and autonomous systems operations and accelerate advances in autonomous technologies. The era of uncrewed has begun, and we are rising to achieve a truly hybrid fleet, and I want to move at a fast pace to get there, because these are the types of asymmetric technologies that we need in our Navy to be able to fulfill that manned, unmanned fleet that we all need to operate in. At Harvard University last fall, I announced my vision for a new maritime statecraft, a call for a whole-of-government effort to build comprehensive U.S. and allied maritime power, both commercial and naval, to prevail in an era of intense strategic competition. One of my many priorities as Secretary of the Navy has included finding gaps in our infrastructure, particularly the gaps in our shipbuilding infrastructure. Last month, in my remarks at West in San Diego, I said that we cannot ask the American taxpayer to make greater public investments while some in the industry conduct stock buybacks and prioritize executive compensation over investments to the industrial base. And I stand by those statements. This is a team effort, and we need everybody to come to the table and provide the support needed to be able to deploy these technologies out into the fleet on time and on budget. My primary responsibility includes ensuring that we have these essential tools, ships and weapons. They need to be able to fight and win our nation's wars. The People's Republic of China boasts almost 50% of the global shipbuilding market, while the United States capacity for shipbuilding stands at a mere 0.13%. A few days ago, I returned from this visit to the Indo-Pacific, where I toured shipyards in South Korea and Japan and learned about their shipbuilding infrastructure, their modernization, the investments that they actually make into their own shipyards, and capital investments is enormous. And not only that, but they actually build the hospitals, the schools, the CDCs, the bowling alleys, everything else you can imagine to try to attract workers to their shipyards and then retain them. And what I took away from this visit was that we must explore any and all opportunities to expand our own shipbuilding capabilities through competition, through innovation, and industrial capacity. Now look, it's impossible to operate a fighting force without ships or equipment, and it is also impossible to run a Navy and Marine Corps under a month-to-month or even week-to-week budget, for God's sakes. For the past 6 months, the government has been funded by continuing resolutions, stopgaps, severely impeding our ability to effectively plan for the future. There exists far too many malign external threats for distractions by our own self-imposed internal problems. We cannot continue operating at maximum capability and capacity under short-term funding. It's just a recipe for disaster. And I maintain that the government and industry must work together to develop the shipbuilding industrial base that's needed. We simply cannot build, maintain, and repair a fleet without the proper funding that we need to do so. Just as innovation drove victory for the United States during World War II, Innovation continues to drive victory at sea today. I look forward to the future of the Navy Marine Corps innovation, and I look forward to what you in this audience will provide for our servicemen and our women. At his change of command address in 1961, then Chief of Naval Operations Arleigh Burke stated, and I quote, "In this modern world, the instruments of warfare are not solely for waging war. Far more importantly, they are the means for controlling peace," unquote. As I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, we're at a turning point. The world is teeming with strife and conflict. But our Navy and Marine Corps team continues to train and demonstrate its lethality every single day. And our sailors and Marines are equipped with the best materials and technologies because of the foundational support that was created by industry, as I said earlier. I remain committed to a fully integrated team comprised of our sailors, Marines on sea, land, and air, our DoD civilians, and our contractors, of which I was one for 17 years, working together to ensure mission accomplishment. I want to thank you for your support. May God bless our sailors and Marine civilians and their families. And I know there's a lot on your mind, so let's get to Q&A.
Mr. Secretary, if you don't mind, I'll throw out the first question. About 60% of the audience right now is industry. And clearly...
The other 40% media, right?
Well, could be. No, but I say that in...
I love you both, by the way, for the record.
Yeah, in all sincerity, because it's kind of like E.F. Hutton, that old commercial used to be, when they'd speak, everybody listened. Well, clearly, you caught the community's attention with your recent public comments at U.S. West. And basically, it was that industry needs to focus on being on cost and on schedule. And so you've got the industry guys here. What would be your follow-up on that?
Well, my follow-up on that is, for 17 years, I ran a company, and I prided in running my company by actually delivering products on time, on schedule, and with the necessary quality. That's what we contract industry and vendors to do. And so when things aren't working out well, let's communicate about what's not working well. I promised you 2.5 years ago when I was first up here that I would communicate and engage with industry aggressively. And I think I've kept to that promise. I also promised you a robust pipeline, and we have kept to that promise as well, too. We have a pipeline that essentially delivers 2 Virginia-class submarines a year, 2 destroyers a year, frigate, and a lot of other things as well, too. You've got to be able to demonstrate that you can deliver those products on time or on schedule, because I shouldn't be budgeting for things that can't be delivered. That's opportunity cost. And I have way too many requirements across the threshold of our department, of our enterprise, whether it be weapons requirements, whether it be quality of life and quality of service requirements as well, too. And I'm proud, actually, of our record on quality of life and quality of service. When I came in the Marine Corps alone 2.5 years ago, and I'm not taking all the credit for this, all the credit goes to these Marines up here, but retention for first-time enlistees was at 25%. 25%. 3 out of 4 were getting out. For the past 3 years in a row now, we've increased that retention 10% every single year. And that's because we are investing in people's quality of life and quality of service, people being our #1 warfighting asset. So yes, we've got to deliver products on time and service. It's not very difficult. And when there's challenges, let's talk through them. Let's try to get to a solution. We'll be investing, I don't want to reveal the numbers, but we'll be investing billions of dollars in the submarine industrial base in 25 alone. And when you look at the number across the fit-up, it's enormous. And that's good, because we need to get to a better place from 1.3 Virginias a year to 2.33 or so that we need to take into account AUKUS in the future as well, too. But I also need industry to do its part. I need industry to invest in your own production lines and your own capabilities so that you could actually produce them a lot faster than where we're currently at. So that's what it's all about.
Thank you, sir. Oh, here.
Over here on your right, sir.
Help me, number 2.
I was, Mike Stone from Reuters. I was on the phone with a major shipbuilder. They said that they've been investing in their own facilities. It's really the workforce and some of the lower parts of the supply chain that have been the problem in getting to that 2.3, and that's why you're not going to fund that unneeded second Virginia. So can you, just as a rebuttal, is there a reason that you can go and support those parts that are failing? And is it really on GD and HII for this, or is it in other places?
2 words: invest more. You're not at where you need to be. Look, I'm not saying that supply chain hasn't been a challenge. Of course it's been a challenge. You know, we've suffered through years of COVID now, and but we've done a lot actually to try to help and assist, you know, smaller vendors so that they don't go out of business, for example, right? And we have a labor problem in this country. I don't think it comes as a surprise to anybody. We have a blue-collar labor problem, and I pray that, you know, our Congress can actually get beyond their divisions that they have, their partisan divisions, and come up with comprehensive immigration reform so that we could actually bring more people into the labor pool. We need to have more legal immigration. We need to actually have more authorities for visas overseas, both blue-collar and white-collar visas, so that people can come to this country and participate in this great democracy to fix the labor problem as well. So 2 significant problems. But I would also argue that industry needs to invest more in their own companies to get their production rates up to where they need to be so that we can get a better place, and they could also retain more of their people too, right? And, you know, numerous companies have different challenges across the board. They're not all the same challenges, right? But for those companies that are having problems in retention, well, damn it, take better care of your people. If they can't find housing in your local communities, well, then work with the governments to build housing in the local communities to get about it. That's what problem solvers do, right? So I'm not minimizing the challenges. I'm just saying industry needs to do its part as well.
On your right, sir.
Hi, Sam Legrone with USNI News.
Hi, Sam.
How are you, sir? So you've been to the Japanese yards, you've been to the South Korean yards, and those yards, specifically the South Korean yards, do things on time, on schedule, with a really high quality of production. What they don't have is change orders, and they don't build anything that isn't 100% completely done. That is not how Naval Sea Systems Command operates. You know, we see kind of throughout kind of our travels that sometimes GFE's not there on time, sometimes the requirements aren't baked for some of these ships. How much culpability does the department have in providing the appropriate requirements, appropriate designs, and all of the necessary materials and funding that they need in order for the shipyards to kind of go out?
Yeah, I blame all the Secretary of the Navies that came before me. No, look, this is a systemic problem, always has been at NAVSEA and a lot of other places, right? But since I've come in as Secretary of the Navy, I've tempered down on change requests. You know, some of the earlier statements that I made when I first came in, that we stink at cost estimation and trying to estimate schedules, for example, right? It takes acquisition discipline to be able to do that. I've tried over these last 2.5 years to actually make the necessary investments in both personnel and culture. Okay, so I meet with all my acquisition executives once a quarter, and I talk about this extensively. Stop with the engineering change requests. Okay, that contract design has to be that contract design. Unless there's a piece of transformational piece of equipment that comes along that's going to transform the way we fight, that doesn't go into that contract design. It goes into a block 0, block 1, block 2, block 3 change later on. But let's stick to the contract design so that we can deliver these things on time and on budget. So I recognize the historical problem that we've had. Hope isn't a strategy. We have actually tried to work very hard within the acquisition community to tamper down on engineering change requests and requirements creep as well, too.
This is Secretary over here on your left.
Hi, sir. Megan Eckstein with Defense News. How are you today?
Hi, Megan.
Hi. I also wanted to ask about your visit to the Korean and Japanese shipyards. You've talked about wanting to create more shipbuilding and ship repair capacity here at home. Some of the construction yards and a lot of the repair yards already here would tell you they don't have enough work right now to keep their personnel busy. And I just wonder how you look at the role of potential new yards or new entrants to the field. What demand signal do you see to be worth that investment?
Yep, competition is always good. I think there are several smaller U.S. shipyards that have gone dormant and perhaps are struggling that could benefit from a cash infusion from an international investor here in the United States, the way that Austal, the way that BAE, the way that Fincantieri has in Wisconsin, for example. And that involves not just naval shipbuilding, but commercial shipbuilding as well, too. And so working together to try to build those pipelines so that these investors can be successful in the future, I think does create opportunities. And I'm not suggesting that it's going to be easy by any means of the imagination, but what I do know is that if you don't start the process, you'll never get there. And that's what calling for this new national maritime statecraft is all about. In the 1980s, we used to actually subsidize the shipbuilding industry. We moved away from that. There was this theory that basically we could leave it to the market and the market would take care of itself. Absolutely correct. It did take care of itself. China moved right in. They now dominate 50% of the market. Thank God we have two allies in Korea and Japan that also moved in and actually made major investments to get there. And today, they dominate the commercial shipbuilding industry. But in this country right now, we can't even build an LNG ship that transports LNG within our own borders, for God's sakes. So why not have a foreign investor come in who does know how to build those LNG ships, for example, build some for the domestic marketplace, and through that commercial shipbuilding, eventually naval shipbuilding will benefit through more competition and through hopefully prices going down.
Sir, directly in front of you, Bill Conley, Mercury Systems. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again, sir.
So a question. One thing you didn't really touch on is the undersea side and the need for undersea situational awareness. How is that fight or that environment evolving? Is that continuing to accelerate?
It's all classified. I can't talk about it here. It's extremely important. Our maritime domain awareness under the sea is critical, obviously, in every part of the world that we operate. And the collaboration that we've been building over the past 2.5 years with our allies and partners, take India, for example, right? Getting to an ASW sort of collaboration agreement with India the way that we have just this past year has been transformational. That allows us to collaborate together under the sea. But, major investments in the submarine base, obviously, the types of submarines that we're building, but I don't want to go into too much more detail on our advantages versus our adversaries. And in the world of UUVs as well, too. Very exciting. And it's been going on for a long time, more than just 2.5 years.
Mr. Secretary, over here.
Hi, Brian Everstein with Aviation Week. So obviously I want to talk to you about aviation. The Navy's had a long, lingering, stubborn shortage of strike fighter pilots, and Sinatra is also seeing a delay of students getting started due to some issues with T-45. Can you talk about the Navy's road ahead with UJITs, the next generation trainer? There's been some concerns from industry that the requirements push this more toward a full development program. How can you move quickly to meet that need? And speaking of classified, anything you want to share on FAXX timeline?
No. T-45s, we've actually recovered quite well from the situation we had just a year and a half ago, 2 years now. And so actually our pilot pipelines have come down dramatically since then, so I'm pretty excited about that. The fighter shortfall actually has also been reduced significantly as well, too, thanks to the extended service lives that we've been able to achieve on our own. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm obviously concerned about, Tech Refresh 3 on our future fighter aircraft on F-35, but hopefully industry will be able to overcome that challenge, and we'll be able to start buying them at higher rates in the future as well too. But look, let's not kid ourselves. You heard the comptroller talk about the Fiscal Responsibility Act. It is having a downward pressure on our budgets, and you'll see that likely in 25 and 26 perhaps. I don't know how 26 will look, but definitely you'll see that in 25. So, that creates a downward pressure where hard decisions have had to be made in the 25 budget to be able to meet all the requirements of the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
One more over here.
All right.
Hi, sir. Mallory Shelbourne with USNI News. Wanted to follow up on your announcements about the Korean and Japanese shipyards. When you mentioned dormant yards, Fore River, Sparrows Point, those are the ones that come to mind, Avondale. Are those the facilities you're talking about? And if so, what do you see as the path forward, as a lot of these places have been shuttered for decades and would require significant funding and investment? in order to get them to any place where they could build ships like you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, there are several, as you mentioned, shipyards that are in numerous state of material conditions, and a lot of it will have to do with, you know, the investor that's purchasing those shipyards and how much capital investment they actually want to come in and actually make. In some cases, I think an infusion of capital investment into smaller shipyards that are operating but could use that capital investment to get them to a better place to be able to be more competitive. But that's really a decisions for industry to make, and so that's just a conversation that's been had between the shipyards that I visited and any others that want to participate as well too. So visits have been had in the past to U.S. Shipbuilders. They're doing their homework, they're doing their due diligence, and we'll see what happens over the next several months, I think, before the end of the year. What announcements come out. I don't have any inside secrets. It's, you know, that's not my job. My job is simply to try to encourage investment here in the United States so that we can actually build these capital ships with American jobs, actually.
Mr. Secretary, I think I can speak for the audience. Thank you so much. And the Navy is absolutely, I mean, they owe you a lot. You've come back from industry and you've done a lot. So thank you so much for being who you are.
Thank you, sir.